All entertainment, whether it's a film, TV series, comic book, or video game, is ultimately the product of two powerful forces. Art, the pursuit of creativity for its own sake, and commerce, the pursuit of bigger audiences, better funding, and hopefully the profits to fund future creations. This pull between pure creative vision and commercial success has had a defining effect on Finnish game developer Remedy Entertainment, with the studio's desire for creative expression leading to their exit from the successful Max Payne franchise and the pursuit of an ambitious, challenging new project, 2010's Alan Wake. 13 years and several games later, the developer is on the verge of another major change, with the success of Wake's 2023 sequel laying the groundwork for a bold new experiment, a shared universe connecting the company's games and enriching the core themes of each entry. And fittingly, the first real steps into this new era also arrive through Alan Wake, specifically its story expansions Night Springs and The Lake House. Releasing in June and October of 2024, these episodic adventures act as a bookend to both Wake's sequel and this chapter in Remedy's evolution, using each entry to entice old and new fans while pushing the team to its creative and technical limits. But can a studio manage to stay true to its core mission in the face of massive popularity, or does the pursuit of one avenue dilute the impact of another? Here, I will explore the storytelling and gameplay choices in each expansion, and how Remedy uses these experiments to build the next era of their history. Spoilers for both expansions, as well as Remedy's other games, to follow. DLC, short for downloadable content, has held a prominent role throughout the history of video games. Stretching all the way back to Atari's Game Line service in the 70s, DLC started exploding in popularity as developers began tapping into the potential of the internet and online connectivity, with consoles like the PS2, the Xbox, and the GameCube all implementing free add-on content, while PC games like Half-Life experimented with full-on episodic story expansions. Speaking of, how are those third entries coming, Valve? Anything? No? Alright. Not surprisingly, DLC's importance only grew with the new and improved online features of 7th gen consoles, as developers big and small released cosmetic items, minor gameplay mods, or full-on additional stories to extend the life of their games. Remedy in particular dabbled in plenty of DLC with Alan Wake's 2010 release, adding onto their main story with specials like The Signal and The Writer, as well as a third entry that was redeveloped into the standalone game American Nightmare. Given the game's homages to serialized fiction like Twin Peaks and the Dark Tower books, even framing the whole story inside a season of television, these add-ons feel right at home, letting Remedy rework ideas that didn't make it into the game while iterating on the core themes of the story. And though Wake 2 largely does away with the TV framing device, choosing instead to mirror the structures of Alan's fictional books, the team would return to these episodic installments through Wake 2's first DLC, Night Springs, using each entry to launch wild experiments in style and tone. It's also worth noting that while Wake 1's DLC keeps events squarely focused on Alan's adventures through the Dark Place, Night Springs capitalizes on the perspective shifts introduced through Saga Anderson, building itself around characters who reflect different aspects of the Remedy universe. Reflecting on the choice to broaden the story through a bigger cast, game director Kyle Rowley would state, "We had the high-level concept of what Night Springs was going to be from basically pre-production of the main game. When you're playing as a character, you just get closer to them, and you see their perspective. Originally, we wanted to have more playable characters than we actually ended up with in Alan Wake 2, but after determining we wouldn't have the capacity to create more than 3 for the main game, we started spinning the idea of using Night Springs to explore what playing with multiple characters could look like. With a shorter development period for expansion content and the opportunity to build onto what we already have more quickly, it gave us greater flexibility, and, in a way, more creative freedom." Loosely set during Alan's 13-year imprisonment, Night Springs follows 3 of the writer's attempts to escape from the Dark Place, channeling the fiction of his early work to influence reality. But in place of the more straightforward narrative of something like American Nightmare, putting players back in Alan's POV, each episode is built around a different character, or echo of a character, introduced in Remedy's titles, who bring their own perspective to the now familiar elements of Wake's world. Number One Fan puts us in the shoes of the Waitress, a character heavily based on Brightfall's resident Alan obsessive Rose Marigold, on a mission to save her crush/idol from a horde of zombie haters and a version of Scratch known as the Bad Boy.
The love of your life is doomed! Doomed!
It's about as far as you can get from the oppressive, haunting vibes of Wake 2's main game, with the Waitress's boundlessly peppy outlook giving a heightened cartoonishness to the episode. The rain-soaked rural splendor of Bright Falls gets a full pastel makeover here, and the visceral terror of Petriolanco's soundtrack has been swapped out for a jauntier mix of rockabilly fight music and 80s power ballads, giving everything a lovably cheesy feel. Even the episode's gameplay leans into this heightened goofiness, doing away with the flashlight mechanics and ammo scarcity of previous games in favor of something wacky and empowering, kinda like those memes where Isabelle from Animal Crossing shows up in Doom. The Taken are still a threat thanks to their numbers, but ripped out of the imposing shadows of Wake 2 and remade into mindless trolls, it's kinda hilarious watching the Waitress turn these guys into mulch with her convenient private arsenal, especially when it's followed by some adorably in-character quips. It's extra funny knowing that this isn't really Rose, but Alan approximating Rose, who's also approximating Alan. And while it's fairly linear in terms of design and gameplay, Number One Fan still does an amazing job of selling me on Night Spring's overall premise, deconstructing Wake's base elements and seeing how far they can be pushed with the right mix of ideas. Which is why, comparatively, Episode 2 feels like a bit of a letdown. Following a lookalike of Control hero Jesse Faden, dubbed the Sibling, the episode North Star returns players to the abandoned amusement park Coffee World, now the headquarters of a government conspiracy that may or may not be holding our hero's brother. Given who this protagonist is based on, it makes sense that North Star draws heavily from Control, using shadowy organizations and deep-seated conspiracies to shift back into the tense survival horror vibes Wake is known for. And therein lies the problem. It feels like we've been here before. While the Siblings character manages to bring in a few interesting new wrinkles through Jessie's internal monologue and her interactions with Polaris. Long story, it's kinda like Navi from Zelda, but less talkative. Hey! North Star's tone and gameplay feel too similar to Wake 2's base game to stand out on their own. Despite sharing a lot of Jessie's attributes, the Sibling lacks the high-concept thrill of her supernatural powers, likely due to the expansion's tighter environments. And though the game attempts to compensate for this, encouraging backtracking, giving more frequent ammo drops, and leaning more heavily on puzzle mechanics, it ends up feeling more like Saga's sections in the back half of the game, when the game's still trying to scare you even though you've spent hours building yourself into a badass. But if there's a saving grace to this episode, it's definitely the story, which manages to slowly shift the tone from standard survival horror into something so absurd, it's as silly as it is scary. This collision of tones is ultimately what I think makes Control so great, taking the conspiracy thriller underpinnings of the X-Files and amplifying them until it becomes Lovecraftian. And while North Star keeps a lot of that atmosphere through the episode, its third act swings into something much more heightened and uncanny. Instead of an agency obsessed with defining and controlling the supernatural, this grand conspiracy becomes a riff on Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where everyone's just like obsessed with coffee. Probably an in-joke about Remedy's home country of Finland. They love it there. The episode's ending, though a bit rushed, is still a really fun capper to this insane spiral, ratcheting into a finale that's so out of left field, all you can really do is go, wait, what? After the raw thrills and fresh style of Number One Fan, North Star can feel a bit lacking in variety, with all of its base elements feeling a little too familiar. But even if this familiarity is enough to sour players on the episode, its wild twists and dark absurdism show the power of subverting that familiarity, of smashing these forces together to create something strange and exciting. It only gets better from here. Not surprisingly, Night Spring's third entry, Timebreaker, is my favorite episode in the expansion, pulling countless ideas from across Remedy's games into one tense chase story. Timebreaker follows Shawn Ashmore, like the real person Shawn Ashmore, also known as the Actor, who's playing the hero for a multiverse-hopping game developed by Poison Pill Entertainment and under the direction of Sam Lake. Think that's meta enough? Well, buckle up, there's more on the way.
What the fuck fuck is this?
After finding his own corpse in his trailer, we've all been there, am I right? Sean meets a familiar red-headed woman who gives him the lowdown on all this insanity. It turns out the premise of the video game is actually real, and Sean is being hunted down through every reality by the mysterious Mr. Door. To survive, Sean will have to master his reality-hopping abilities, inhabiting the role he's been playing and taking the fight to Door himself. Easily the most lore-heavy entry in Night Springs, Timebreaker also feels like the most geared towards longtime fans, even more than the story that's literally about fan service. The episode is quick to lean back into the familiar, with Sean's jumps taking him into pivotal locations in the Remedy universe, like the woods outside of Bright Falls or the Ocean View Hotel. Sean himself is even a fun nod to 2016's Quantum Break, effectively bringing back the character of Jack Joyce without upsetting any of Microsoft's copyright lawyers. And the parallels to Quantum Break only grow deeper throughout the episode, reintroducing a version of Courtney Hope's Beth Wilder and tying David Harewood's Door to the late-great Lance Reddick's Martin Hatch, pretty much sliding the last piece of the RCU puzzle into place. This multiversal angle even gives a great new spin on the Taken, now referred to as Time Breakers, other versions of Sean that Door has killed and warped into his own private army. It's a fresh new twist on the concept of the multiverse, breaking away from the empty nostalgia of other depictions, and instead, using intertextuality to actually build a story. These previously separate characters have become echoes of bigger archetypes, feeding back into a larger story that's still shrouded in mystery. There's plenty of familiarity in terms of gameplay and combat too, bringing back the flashlight mechanics along with the guided shoot-'em-up structure of Number One Fan. Unlike with Northstar though, Timebreaker's retreads quickly give way to crazy new experiments in format and style. As Sean keeps honing his jumps, the episode's format starts to warp and change with each source of inspiration, reflecting reality through comic books illustrated by the incredible Christian Ward, side-scrolling retro beat-em-ups, or minimalist text adventures like Zork. And though Timebreaker also ends pretty abruptly, I think it still makes an incredible capper to the episode and Night Springs as a whole, building the mythic nature of Remedy's larger story while reinforcing the themes and arc present in Wake 2. If Alan's journey across the game involves opening up to other people, and having that connection make him a better artist, then it's only natural that Night Springs shows a lot of the struggles he took to get there, fighting to adapt to different genres and tones by himself. And I think the results speak for themselves.
It's me, your favorite writer whose voice you would recognize in your sleep. I'm in danger.
There's an unhinged mania radiating through Night Springs, and while this is partly because it's a fun breather after an intense experience for both devs and players, it also mimics Alan's struggles with ego, reasserting himself by going back to the roots of his success. And though the ending of each episode ends up reiterating Alan's tragic, self-sabotaging nature, returning to the writer still trapped in the dark place, these shifts in perspective and tone also hint at the triumph he's able to achieve later, using his art to connect with people and finally move beyond himself, seamlessly weaving one thread between the expansion, the main game, and Remedy's emerging universe. And not surprisingly, this central thread of Art's ability to channel our humanity would inspire Wake 2's second expansion, giving the final word for this era of the company and their story.
Breach detected in sublevel 5. Staff should seek shelter immediately.
We have a situation in the lake house. All agents converge on the facility now.
While the Night Springs expansion was primarily built around tonal experiments with Remedy's formula, its sister DLC The Lake House delivers a more cohesive, definitive experience in the vein of Control's AWE expansion, giving a final wrap-up to the developer's current story while hinting at their next major project. And given the previous success of Control and its crossovers with Alan Wake, as well as the ongoing plans to ramp up Remedy's connected universe, it only made sense that the Lake House would be the most technically and creatively ambitious of Wake 2's expansions. While most of Wake 2's creative team returned for both DLCs, including Kyle Rowley as director and Sam Lake, Clay Murphy, and Molly Maloney as co-writers, Lake House's development also pulled in members from Control's creative team, with the goal of making a cohesive, accessible experience that balanced the tone and aesthetics of both series. There was obviously a lot of discussion between the two teams and how we can utilize the core themes of those individual franchises in each other's games, recounts Rowley. Even when we were developing Alan Wake 2, we were quite aware that there may be people who've not played Control, who've not played the first Alan Wake, and we wanted to make sure that this game was accessible for them. I think that's how we've always approached it. On the surface level, it's accessible for everybody, but the deeper you go and explore the world, the more rewarding it can become, especially if you're heavily invested in our previous games. Taking place in the lead-up to Part 4 of Wake 2's story. I know, it's kinda clunky, but just go with it. The expansion puts players in the role of FBC agent Kiran Estevez, played by Janita Gavankar, as she investigates a distress call from the Bureau's Bright Falls facility, the mysterious Lake House. And as Estevez's search takes her deeper into the facility, she's forced to reckon with the horrific experiments taking place behind its doors, and the haunting history of its dual department heads, the Marmonts.
Safety, security, and censorship.
It's a C. It's a C.
What? That is the joke, Diana.
Well, it's a stupid fuck.
Wonderful joke, Jules. We'll see you down there.
Yeah, that seems healthy.
This intricate meshing of styles and tones is present from the expansion's opening minutes, with a short trip back through the woods of Cauldron Lake quickly giving way to the Bureau's mid-century brutalist architecture, with a couple of twists to keep it unique. While the facility's bare concrete walls, retro furnishings, and sharp geometric designs evoke the FBC's headquarters, it's also a more compact, less vertical setting, a choice made to complement the expansion's survival horror leanings. As a result, the Lake House is all tight corridors, cramped offices, and underlit industrial spaces, all locked off through a series of access cards we have to hunt for, replacing the otherworldly vastness of the oldest house with a more clinical, oppressive atmosphere. Which makes sense, this is a research station. Or it was anyway. And the cold precision of the facility only highlights the corruption that's overtaken it. Glossy black floors and bright green carpets are spattered in blood, and the Lake House's empty rooms have become a home to the Taken, as well as the Painted, a mostly unkillable new enemy type with ties to the facility's experiments. And thanks to the tighter quarters and sparser ammo drops, every step through the Lake House becomes a nail-biting experience, even as Kiran picks up heavier weaponry across the story. But enough about the setting, let's talk about another standout for the expansion, our new protagonist Kiran Estevez, who players might recognize as the surly, sarcastic agent from Wake 2's main game, basically playing the Albert to Saga's Agent Cooper in a few key moments. Personally, I think she's a great addition here, with her lived-in persona as a jaded Bureau agent helping to immerse players deeper into the expansion. Firstly, she's hilarious, and while the expansion's overall tone is a lot closer to the creeping terror we see in Wake 2, Kiran's jaded sarcasm brought on by years of this stuff is a really fun subversion, offsetting or augmenting moments of horror.
Alan Wake's writing is being studied here. Do you know anything about him?
Names don't matter. 1,000 more to come.
They say clear communication is the key to any relationship. You and I have some work to do there.
And of course, this new perspective also has a major impact on the gameplay. Estevez might lack Jesse's superpowers and Alan's reality warping abilities, but she's still a seasoned investigator, so it's no surprise that a lot of the Lake House's non-survival gameplay revolves around, investigating. Every empty terminal, open file, audio log, or looping film projector gives bits of story that help us piece together the larger picture of what exactly went wrong with the facility, as well as how Wake's writing factors in. And like any good investigation, Kiran's journey through the Lake House ends up unearthing its long history of corruption and abuse, all spiraling out of the inhuman spirit it was built on.
The Marmonts had let the lake in, but the water could not flow. It became trapped, stagnant, went bad. The truth was controlled here. The art was not art, just content for the experiment.
Both Control and Alan Wake have a kind of meta-narrative subtext, equating the supernatural with the ethereal power of art, but each game gives a wildly different perspective on this theme. While Alan's journey through the dark place is built around channeling your humanity through your art, confronting his inner darkness through collaboration and creativity, Control is a warning of how rigid and corrupt institutions can threaten that power, building systems that eventually tear themselves apart. And through the Lake House, the Marmonts, and their mysterious decline, we get to see the horrifying collision of these ideas. Initially, the husband and wife directing duo are framed as another example of standard FBC hubris, trying to quantify something they don't really have the power to understand. But of course, the results of Kieran's investigation tell a different story. The Marmonts don't seem passionate about anything, whether it's the art they're studying, the science behind it, or even their rapidly crumbling marriage. Rather, they're two egotists driven by a lust for glory, attempting to harness the dark place by manufacturing emotion any way they can. And no surprise, it all leads to disaster. Jules' abuse of Rudolph Lane results in the painter's violent death, his last work haunting the facility. While Diana's countless attempts to automate Wake's writing all fall flat because art without meaning isn't art. It's just content, and instead of channeling humanity, it consumes it. You can probably guess the commentary at play here. Given the expansion's 2024 debut, its themes of mechanized clinical horror, Wake's meta-narrative elements, and the Remedy team's passion for creative freedom, the Marmont's experiments and general ethos of the Lake House are crafted to evoke the rise of AI-generated art, even giving birth to its own swirly, uncanny recreations of the humanoid Taken. It's a very modern, relatable kind of horror, with creators in every medium seeing their art plagiarized into half-formed copies, all without their permission. And though the entertainment industry has historically used technologies to cut costs and innovate creatively, generative AI represents the worst kind of existential threat, a force that feeds off of human creativity while eliminating that humanity from the industry. Sam Lake even took the opportunity to speak on behalf of the artistic value of video games at Remedy's Capital Markets Conference in 2024, stating, "Games require long, complex productions. Games are cutting-edge technological achievements. Games are a hit business. We strive to create commercial hits. All of this is true. All of this is needed. All of this must be in balance for us to succeed. What else is true? Games are ambitious, passionate works of creative expression. Games are high-quality entertainment. What we create at Remedy is special, and we must never lose that." Despite their presence as add-ons existing within the larger narrative spiral of Alan Wake 2, Night Springs and the Lake House feel like a pitch-perfect note to end on for this chapter for Remedy, building thrilling, accessible entertainment while using these stories to reaffirm the company's commitment to balancing the art and humanity with the commerce of their games. It's a move that feels especially deliberate with the recent passing of James McCaffrey, a longtime collaborator who gave one of his last performances in Wake 2. In many ways, both expansions are framed as both eulogy and celebration, giving a tribute to McCaffrey at the end of Night Springs and closing the Lake House with one final chapter song, fittingly titled The End of an Era. And yeah, I'll say it, listening to this song f***ed me up. It's a sentiment that echoes a lot of Wake's core themes. Art isn't just a channel for our humanity. In many ways, it is our humanity, giving us the means to shape all our joy and pain into something powerful, something that connects us to people who think or feel the same. And though the pursuit of commercial success may clash with that mission, it's important, even necessary, to foster artistic expression, even if it takes years to find that success. I'm really proud about what we achieved with Alan Wake 2, and personally, to me, games as a storytelling medium, an art form, reflects Lake. In this life, nothing is guaranteed. Many times, it seemed like this game would never get made. It was a long and winding road. We lost wonderful friends along the way. No one knows about the future, but here we are, and we made this, and no one can take that away from us. That's worth celebrating. As of 2025, Remedy's future looks brighter and more ambitious than ever, with Wake 2 finally recouping its development costs and the studio stampeding towards the development of Control 2, remakes for Max Payne 1 and 2, the release of their first ever co-op shooter FBC Firebreak, and a few as of yet unnamed titles. With every production cloaked in secrecy, there is no telling how any of these games will turn out, or what larger story they'll weave together. But watching Remedy grow over the years, it's more than enough to know that its many artists are still out there, keeping the spirit of creativity burning bright. Happy Alan Wake Brawl, everyone, and thanks for checking out today's video. As any channel regulars know, I got really into Alan Wake last year, and with Remedy dropping these 2 expansions and ramping up all their upcoming games, it was a treat to dive back into this and see how the team were able to grow the scope and excitement of their story while reinforcing the ideas behind it. It's been especially great seeing this against the backdrop of the larger industry, because after so many setbacks and so much bad news, it's awesome seeing a company succeed by sticking to their mission. Here's hoping we see more of that in the future. If you like this video, please feel free to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Every little bit helps the channel out a lot. I'd also like to give a special thanks to Carol Ann Brenneman, The Comics Cave, and my patrons, who are helping me to grow this channel and continue doing what I love, and hopefully what you love too. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and remember, stay in the light.